Hello, everybody in Facebook Live Land. We are the Podguyz Podcast, bringing it to you live like every Monday, 10:15 Eastern Standard Time. We're a little bit late. We're at 10:20. I'm Tony Kaz, followed by
Kevin Neary here.
And the ever-loving Picasso, Sparkolicious.
Hey, what's going on?
All right, guys, you might notice we have two very special guests with us today. We have the amazing man in a little bit of blue and red. Down at the ye old bottom, you may see him. He is the great Scotty V. We're going to call him Scotty V. I'm not going to go with your last name. It's a long last name.
Thank you.
He is a Superman aficionado. He is working with the Superman webpage. But he is here today because we were all joined here today by the man, the myth, the legend, Jack O'Halloran. Jack, thank you very much for coming on the show, brother.
Hey, my pleasure.
I am glad that we are joined by you today. We have so many questions to ask you. I cannot wait to get into this. Let's start in the very beginning, Jack. We're going to start out in the very beginning. College football career. It went really well for you. You were at the College of
Western Kentucky.
And you were having great seasons, back to back, starting from your sophomore, right?
No, I left after my freshman year, actually.
I thought it was the sophomore year. Okay, it was freshman year.
I was up for Little All-American because we played the Ohio Valley Conference, which was a heck of a brand of football, boy. And we had a great coach, but I got into a conflict with the dean of men down there. And I just, college was boring.
You heard it here first, guys. College is boring.
That is true.
It is. It just is. It's a lot of book.
Yeah, I tell you what they did to me. As I had a couple of ladies down there that were pretty. Western was a great school. The ratio was like 8-1.
Wow.
And so I had a couple pretty smart ladies that they used to go to classes and take notes. And I would take their notes and then I would go in and take my test, and I would ace all the tests, but I never showed up at class. So they got kind of angry, and they said, "You got to be cheating." I said, "What did you say?" So the guy said, "You got to be cheating. Nobody can." Because I had like a 3.8, 3.9 average. He said, "How could you do this if you're not in class all the time?" And I said, "Well, you think I'm cheating on exams, and let's sit down. You bring the exams in, you make them up. I'll sit in the desk right in front of you, and then I'll take the exams right in front of you. You willing to do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And then the athletic director got really mad. He said, "Why are you insulting them like that? We don't want them to leave school." I was in football and track. I threw the discus like 200 feet. So they did it. I sat down, and I aced every one of the tests. And then I told them to take the test in the school and stick it.
Nice.
And I went home.
Nice.
I got insulted, actually.
Well, I'm seeing as...
insult me on my obvious cheating ways. You're terrible people.
Yeah, it was, it's not a nice thing to do. So.
Well, not to say that you were a hard-headed, young, strapping lad, but...
I was hard-headed. And then I had my father's world, and I had the greatest teacher I had in my life was Meyer Lansky. He's probably one of the smartest men I ever met.
What did he teach?
Lansky?
Yeah.
You don't know who Meyer Lansky is?
I don't know.
I know who he is.
Meyer Lansky was the head of the Jew mob in Philly.
Oh, okay.
In the country, in the world.
You would have figured, me being Jewish, I would have known Jew mob.
Not the Jew mob.
Meyer Lansky was a serious individual. He was partners with my father. He was partners with my father and Frank Costello and Charlie Luciano. He was there in the beginning.
That's some old school Italian stuff right there.
Very clever man. He was the brains of the outfit,
Oh, of course. That was
gaming industry.
Now after your prolific college career, you went into the boxing ring, right?
Well, I was going to play pro football first, and then I just told you the story about what happened with the Eagles, and the Jets said, "Please come back up here," and And these guys talk about when I said I could beat Ali, they figured, that's not a bad idea. The only problem is, I was already considered professional in the sport, so I couldn't box amateur. Like today, you could get away with that.
Yeah.
But you couldn't then. So I started boxing professional. They put me in the gym for a few months, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I had my first fight actually in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then
Pennsylvania was a big hotbed for boxing back in the day.
Yeah, it was an outdoor fight. It was pretty good. Yeah.
I know, especially in the 70s, 80s, it was big for not necessarily like the mom and pop gyms to throw big fights, but especially down in the Philly area, it was bigger to have like the bigger gyms, of course. Like, and you could get promoters and you can get different people to come in.
At this Pashock and Moore, where Giardello was, a whole bunch of fighters actually. It's a great gym actually.
That's awesome.
Legendary. It was one of those legendary places.
Now I know, let me see here, you went 16-0 in your boxing career for the very beginning until you hit Jimmy Somerville, right?
No, I was 16-0 and they found I went to take an exam one day and the doctor said, you have a disease called acromegalia. I said, what the hell is acromegalia? He said, it's a tumor of the pituitary gland. And, I couldn't figure out how I could even get up to go fight. Because it causes depression and all kinds of things. It causes you to grow giganticism. And you have a lot of rheumatoid arthritis in your body and a bunch of stuff. And I said, well, can I fight? He said, well, I don't think you should be fighting. And I said, yeah, well, it's my day job, so guess what?
He probably had money on the other guy, though, Jack. That's the problem.
You had to,
I don't think so.
Being in my father's world, you had to have a day job where you had the law looking at you all the time.
Oh, sure, you had to make some money.
And boxing was a day job. Problem was that I never, I would take fights on 2 days' notice, 3 days' notice, and stuff like that. And I had a great management team when I first started, but then I just didn't listen to people. I did what I wanted to do, and some days I felt like I could go 10 rounds on my head because I ran all the time. I was always in pretty good shape from being an athlete all my life. But the acromegaly took a big effect on me, and I never realized it until later on in life. And when I really had to do something about it when I went out to fight Kenny Norton in San Diego. And
heavyweight champion Ken Norton, right?
I kicked his butt so bad. I fought him on 4 days. I was in Philly. I was in South Jersey actually, Collingswood, New Jersey, and we were indicted over union business there. I had about 13 indictments against me for bartender waiters union and a couple of things with the Teamsters and.
Jesus.
Anyway, so. They called me on the phone. They said, "You want to fight Ken Norton?" I said, "When?" They said, "Next week." I said, "Send me a ticket." The guy said, "You'll take the fight?" I said, "Send me a ticket." And I went out and I gave Norton a lick. I mean, in the 9th round, I could have sat on a stool because in the 9th round we were standing toe to toe, and the crowd was up on their chairs screaming loud, so loud they had to ring the bell 4 times before anybody heard it. And I was walking back to my corner, and he ran across the ring and hit me behind the head. Moved me into the ring post. And Commissioner Joey Almas was sitting right there, and he jumped up in the corner and said, "If you can't continue, kid, you just want to fight." And I was mad. I said, "I'll kill this guy." That's his hometown, and they're looking for him to fight for the title. So he got a split decision out there, but I won the town, so I stayed there. And I knocked out a few guys in a row, and then I fought Henry Clark for the state title, which nobody wanted to fight Henry, and I took the state title away from him.
That's was it the California state title or
California heavyweight champion?
California heavyweight champion. Okay.
At least everybody knows when Jack's coming to town, he's taking everybody's belts. Unless it's by decision.
He's whipping bitches.
I did some crazy stuff in my career. I fought some. I remember I was in New Jersey, and they called me up one day, and they said, would you want to fight down in Houston, Texas? And I said, yeah, who am I fighting? He said, a kid named Terry Daniels. And they were looking to get a fight for Frazier. They wanted a white guy to fight Frazier.
Oh, yeah.
And Terry Daniels was ranked like 5 in the world or something. They said, you going to fight this kid, Terry Daniels? I said, good. And I was in great shape because I was under house lockup in myself because of the problems we were having in the street. Well, I was training every day. And I went down to Houston, Texas, and the promoter, Lou Viscuzzi, I'll never forget, I got off the plane, he said, my God, you're in shape. I said, aren't you supposed to be in shape when you come to a fight? And I destroyed Terry Daniels. I knocked him out in 3 rounds.
That's awesome. Awesome.
They should have stopped in the first round. So then I go back on the plane to Yank Durham to Philly, and he said to me, if you beat one more good fighter, you can have the Frazier fight. I said, I'll tell you what, you name the place and the fighter, send me a ticket. He said, are you serious? I said, what did I just tell you? Name the place and the fighter, and I'll send me a ticket. So they called me a week later and said, you're fighting Cleveland Williams in Houston, Texas.
Ooh.
Cleveland was a world-ranked fighter.
Yeah, he was.
Pretty good fighter. And
Top 10, right? Top 10?
You know, Houston was his hometown, so I stayed in pretty good shape, and I went down and I gave Cleveland a licking. And in fact, I kind of licked him. I held him up the last couple rounds. I was hitting him combinations. He started to fall down.
When you're holding somebody up, Jack, you just like hitting them. You don't like them as a person.
I whispered in his ear. I said, listen, man, we've been dancing all night. Don't be falling down on me. I beat him 10 out of 10. He's
like, I got a wife and family to get back.
You're like, boom, 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 boom. Here, let me help you out.
I beat him pretty good, and then they gave to Terry Daniels. Terry Daniels fought Frazier, and Cleveland fought George Savello on the same card, and nobody wanted to fight me because they knew I got in shape, and they were, you know, same thing happened to me when I fought in 1969, I think it was 68. 69. I went to South Africa to fight a kid down in South Africa, and I was down there for a month, so I got in great shape down there. And I beat this kid in South Africa, and they called it a draw because they were mad at me because they wanted me to live there, they wanted me to stay there. I said, no, I don't think so. And so they called the fight a draw, but 11 days later, I fought Manuel Ramos in L.A., who was ranked number 2 in the world.
Yep.
And they were getting ready. He was the heavyweight champ of Mexico. And I knocked him out in the 7th round. Then no one would fight me again. So then I fought Forman in the Garden. And I think I trained a week for Forman.
How was Forman, Jack? I always appreciated Forman's defense.
Yeah, Forman in the heyday was.
George was a hell of a fighter.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, he was.
I was beating him first couple rounds of the fight. I walked into a punch. It's my own fault. I walked into a punch, and I got up though. That's what really made me mad was I got up and they stopped the fight right away. They were looking for any excuse, and they stopped it right away.
Jack, did you ever notice that George Foreman never normally throws the first punch in a fight after watching tape on him, or did you just get in there and start to fight?
George was a pretty George was beatable. If you could box and you could move, and if you could keep George going for 7 rounds, he started getting tired. Because Ali asked me about Foreman, and I said, I think he suffers from sickle cell. And he said, why? And I told him, I explained to him, when I was fighting him, and then he fought a guy named Gregorio Peralta, who won 10 rounds with him because he was a hell of a boxer. And he moved around all the time. George couldn't catch him. And he won a decision, but it was, it's one of those fighters that George thought he would knock out in a couple rounds, but he couldn't catch the guy. The guy was a great boxer. So Ali and I talked, and he said to me, tell me about George Foreman. And I told him, and that's when he fixed the ropes. he loosened the ropes to do the rope-a-dope.
The rope-a-dope.
When Foreman had him on the ropes, and Muhammad was blocking one of the punches, and George is winding up and hitting him, and Muhammad's yelling in his ear, my wife hits harder than you, kid. I thought you could fight.
Gorilla Vanilla, yeah.
And you gotta understand something. When you're a big guy and you're winging at somebody and you're missing them, you gotta bring yourself back. It takes a lot of energy out of it.
Takes your balance up.
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
I mean, the punch that Ali knocked him out with in the 7th round, if he hit him that punch in the 2nd round, he wouldn't have budged him. You know?
Yeah.
It's same as when Forman fought Frazier. Frazier was already hurt. Frazier was hurt from the Ali fights. The first fight he fought Ali gave him a terrible beat, but he was so coked up he would never got knocked out. And the fight was, the deal was that Ali loses a fight and his draft problem went away.
Ah, that's shady.
Oh, yeah.
That's shady.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's what really happened. And but when he went back and fought him again, the Thriller Manila. So Frazier took a lot of punishment from Ali. Ali was people say, well, how a puncher was he? Well, let me tell you something. Anybody 210 pounds, 220 pounds, with the hand speed that he had,
that man could snap jab like a.
Trust me, when he hit you, he hurt you.
Oh, hell yeah, he did.
It's like when he fought Liston, and they said, oh, it was a phantom punch. Well, Liston was coming up from underneath, and he was going down when he hit him. And he hit him a hell of a shot, let me tell you something. And Charlie wasn't, but...
Well, Muhammad had an excellent snap jab. The man could move. But he was a shit talker.
He was a great athlete.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what sport he ever did, he would have been great at. And you got to understand something, and they took 4 years of his life away.
Yeah.
And that was over because he was owned by a white syndicate out of Louisville, owned his contract. And when his contract was up, they weren't paying attention to it. His brother Rockman was in the Muslims and got him in the Muslims. And when the Muslims saw Ali's contract up, they grabbed it.
Yep.
And they grabbed him. And when they grabbed it, the group in Louisville had him as a 1Y for the draft. You understand? And they went back into the office and changed it from 1Y to 1A. And he got the draft notice.
Yeah, you get your draft notice right out there.
Well, that same group had him. Well, I don't know if you know, 1Y is you're married or something. You don't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So they changed it, and when they came after him, he just turned around and said, what's the big deal? I'll do like Joe Louis, and I'll never leave the country. I would be able to fight and just put on exhibitions and teach guys how to box and stuff like that. And Herbert Muhammad said, sonny boy, you are going to make an example. And if you go in like the Army like that, he said, we'll shoot you from behind.
Oh.
They scared him because he had just killed Malcolm X.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
So he, and then he actually became involved in religion. I liked Muhammad Ali a lot. He was a very bright guy, and he was totally different when you met with him one-on-one. Mm-hmm. But he was a great athlete. I mean, we had a lot of fun. We were signed to fight 4 times. And one time when I was fighting in California, and they called me to fight a guy named Albert Lewis in Detroit. And Albert Lewis had just won 13 rounds with Ali in Ireland. And then he came home and he knocked out Ernie Terrell, and he beat another guy. Said, we're getting ready for another title fight. And they called me up in California, and my license was being pulled in California for organized crime, which was a bunch of jazz. It was all bad. So they called me from Michigan. I said, well, can I get a license? And they said, absolutely. You'll take the fight? Because he was supposed to fight Buster Mathis, but Buster Mathis couldn't get a license in Michigan. So I said, yeah, I'll take the fight. You kidding? For sure. And I went to Detroit, and I beat Albert Lewis terrible. Beat him 10 out of 10. He's another guy he made me mad at the weigh-in, so I gave him such a beating. I mean,
did he shit talk on you, or is it, because I could see him being a shit talker?
Well, he said that I was a tune-up, and I grabbed the mic. I said, "Tune-up, I'm going to kick your ass." They turned the camera.
In what way is calling you a tune-up an insult? I don't get it. Well, like if somebody called me a tune-up, I'd be like, "Yeah, that's You're
Well,
right.
I did say yeah. I said I'm going to kick the shit out of you.
I don't understand.
You got a little bit nervous because I have
Hey,
this
buddy, you're on Mayflower. Like, we're all right. You know, it's just.
Yeah, we're talking about Thunder and Jack O'Halloran here, man, in his prime time.
You know, when I fought him in Detroit, and that was his hometown.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Harris was a dear friend of mine who was a lightweight champion, Olympic fighter, but he ran Jefferson Boulevard in Detroit, a tough kid in the street. And I said to him, listen, I want you to bet every single round of this fight. He said, Jack, you're fighting Blue Lewis in his hometown. I said, bet every round.
Nice.
They only paid us like, I think, $4,000 for the fight. We made $92,000 betting around the ring. And I beat him every round, 10 out of 10.
Nice.
I broke his elbow, I broke his ribs. I hurt him bad.
Holy crap, how'd you break his elbow?
He was trying to block a punch, and I hit him and broke his elbow. And he
What size gloves were you using? Like 6 ounces?
8
Or
ounces.
8 ounces? Okay, jeez, man, you must have had a hell of an arm.
He kept saying to me, from the 8th round on, he kept saying to me, knock me out, knock me out. I said, no, man, you're a tough guy, quit. And I just gave him a beat, terrible. He never fought again, I don't think, after that.
Oh my God.
Now, not to say that you would bully anybody, Jack, because you're not that type of person to bully someone.
No, I'm sure there was.
But you had to teach somebody a lesson every once in a while because they shit talk and they'd be like, oh well,
The
oh.
motivation came from the tuna, you know?
After the fight, I went up to Deer Lake to meet Muhammad. He was up there training, and I said to him, you know, we put on a whole show because we went into where his training room was. We closed the door and we were kicking the door, punching it, screaming at each other, and the press was all in the other room. Thought we were in there killing each other. He and I laughing like hell. He said, man, come on, let's get these guys all excited. He punching the wall and stuff like that. So we sat down, and he said to me, if I give you a title fight, he said, will you really try and beat me? And I said, I'll tell you what. For the first time in my career, I'll go away to camp like you do. And when you come in that ring, bring a gun with you, son, because that's about the only way you're going to beat me. He said, 2 steaks, please. I loved him. He was a great guy. And he was really, but he was a great, great athlete and a super individual. He was a good person.
Yeah.
What about the Chuck Wepner Ali fight? Do you have a take on that?
Well, Muhammad he actually stopped training. He wasn't training as hard as he did, you know. It was at the end of his career. And what people don't understand is that everybody thought he suffered from Parkinson's, but that's not true. A couple of young kids did blood analyses on him. And the problem he had was he was poisoning his own body because next to his training camp in Deer Lake was a mink farm. A guy named Pollard owned it. And they sprayed an insecticide for the minks, you know. And Muhammad was doing road work, and he was breathing this shit in.
That'll mess them up, yeah.
It actually tore his body up, man. And that's what slowed him down. And no one ever knew that for a couple of years. You know, when he started slurring his words and stuff, people thought he had Parkinson's disease. And I sat with him one time because I had a kid. When I stopped boxing, I took a kid, Frankie Lyles, and made him super middleweight champion of the world. In fact, that's where Freddie Roach got his start at. And we were fighting down in South America, and Ali came down as a promotional deal. And I was waiting for him to come down from upstairs to the lot. I was waiting for him and his wife were together. And he could hardly talk. And when I saw him, I said, well, you know, champ, I really praying for you, man. And he said, Jack, don't pray for me. He said, I lived my life and I had a great time. He said, and it made it look like he was going to sleep a lot because people would fire questions at him all the time when he was sitting ringside or something. And to avoid them, because he couldn't talk all that well.
Yeah.
To avoid them, he pretended like he fell asleep.
Oh wow.
And his mind was still sharp. He was still working out, but he just his body was deteriorating. Man, it was sad. It was really, really sad. And that's what it was from. Everybody said, well, he's got Parkinson's, and he didn't. This insecticide had set off a chain reaction in his body and poisoned him.
Wow.
Yeah, you can notice a slowdown in the documentary films where he's prepping to fight Larry Holmes, and it's just
he wasn't training right. He was and Holmes had a good left hand, but in Muhammad's day, he would have taken Holmes apart, and Wepner, it would have been a joke. Chuck would never fight me because Chuck had one eye. We had the same matchmaker, Al Braverman. Chuck had one eye that used to fall. His whole eyelid used to fall right down.
That's why they called him the bleeding, the bleeder.
Yeah, if you hit him over that one eye, his one. And I had a great left hand. And there was a couple fights he had in the garden. One of them with Manuel Ramos. His eye fell down, and Wepner, Braverman got away with putting new skin and tape. They'll tape it up until the end of the fight.
That's crazy.
They let him get away with it. He was with that. Braverman had a lot of connections in New York. He was a wise guy.
Jack, who was your cut man in the corner?
There was a guy named Adolf Furtaco, who was Giardello's. He worked Giardello's corner and a couple other world champions from South Philly, and he was pretty good cut guy.
No, did he also join you around like I'm sure you had a cult following from when you first started all the way up through your career, but did you have the same head coach or like boxing coach? And
I was in Philly and I had my first 7 fights in Philly, and then because I was going to play ball with the Eagles, I had moved into Jerry Wallman had bought a Sheraton hotel at 39th and Chestnut Street in Philly, and downstairs there was a disco. We had this great disco down there, the Classroom, and myself and Ray Rissmiller and a couple other Eagles, we had the job as doormen and bouncers and stuff like that, which was, and we all lived in the apartments above it. They took the hotel and they turned it into condos.
Cool.
And so we all lived in the building, and there was a rhubarb that happened. Some guys came in there one night and they started a bunch of jazz, and they had guns, and I took them outside, and a few people got hurt pretty bad. And
that escalated very quickly.
That escalated so quickly.
So they
we all lived together. It was good. Then they had rebars and guns, and
it was some people came to the club. Some people came into the club looking for trouble. That's
okay. Oh yeah.
And so I went outside with them so that no one else would get hurt. And I whacked a few out, and then somebody took a shot at me, and so I took a shot at a couple people. Anyway, they put me on a train and got me out of town until they settled it with the law, because some people got hurt pretty bad. So.
Oh wow.
And I got sent to Boston. That's how I was boxing out of Boston for a few years. And then when I went to San Diego, I stayed in California for a few years. So I moved around a lot.
Do you feel, Jack, that with all your athleticism and all of the working out you did and the great shape you stayed in, that was more the reason you were successful, or yourself and other boxers, do you find that there's some sort of an anger within you that you need, that you bring out to want to do this kind of damage to people and win as much as you do, because there's something there within you that I can't even get into that mindset. So I'm wondering what gets you to that, and what you feel is most important.
I don't know. I was raised in a tough area of Philadelphia. Southwest Philadelphia was just starting to integrate. The racism. We didn't have racism like you have today, but there were a lot of ethnic people moving into our area, and so it was a fight every day going to and from school. You had to go through a black neighborhood, so there was always a fight one way or the other.
Back in those days, it was even the Irish and the Italians lived on different sides of the road.
Oh yeah, they did.
So the Jewish, everybody had their own neighborhoods,
Yeah.
So and we had a playground down on Chester Avenue, King Sissing Avenue, called King Sissing Playground, and we had a pool. And the playground down at 49th and Woodland, which was a total black area, they didn't have a pool, so they used to come up to our playground. So we would always have confrontations all the time, especially with basketball courts. So you had to learn how to fight as a kid. And I was very lucky that I had a minder around me that my father put around me, a guy named Rick Collins. And he taught me martial arts and taught me a lot of things when I was very young, preparing me for my father's world, you know.
Now, you bring up your dad as far as a big influence in your life.
My father was Albert Anastasia. My father was a family legacy. That's why I wrote the book. My father was the head of Murder Inc. My father was Albert Anastasia. He was the Gambino family. Albert was the most feared Italian that had ever come into the country.
Wow. I did do a little research about the book. The book that you actually wrote is a biography, correct?
Well, they would not let me. They wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't let me publish the book if I did it.
with real names, real people.
Tony, I think what he's trying to say is that he'd be in prison right now if everything was in there. Right?
True. They made me change some things, and they didn't want it. They didn't want a biography. They wanted me to do like a fictional book, and So I said I made a deal with them. I said I'll do what you call fractional. I'll tell a little bit over here, but a lot of it, 80% of it's true. So
okay.
There's a lot of good stuff. So I did the book that goes from my father's death, and I tell the truth about the Kennedy assassination.
Now, for some of the people who aren't aware of your book, if you guys look it up on Amazon, you can look up Family Legacy, FamilyLegacy. It was published in 2011. Am I correct, Jack?
Yeah.
Jack, there is one conspiracy out there. There's one conspiracy out there as far as the JFK assassination, that there was no shooter and his head just did that. Any truth to that?
That's a bunch of shit.
I know, I'm just messing with you, man. I'm just messing with you.
I can tell you exactly what happened that day. I know exactly how it happened and why it happened. And there were actually 13 shots fired that day down at Dealey Plaza. And first of all, you got to stop and understand that it took them 6 months to reroute that route for him to go down Dealey Plaza. And he's in an open car, the President of the United States, you understand?
Which wasn't a smart idea in the first place.
Four people, I mean, when that happened, I'll ask you a question. When it happened, who was the number one cop in the country?
Number one cop in the country.
Yeah, who's the
I would say
J. Edgar Hoover, yeah.
Bobby Kennedy was Attorney General.
Yeah.
Bobby Kennedy was Attorney General, okay? Now, Bobby Kennedy was his brother's second skin everywhere he ever went in his career. But four people went to see him before Jack went to Dallas, one of them being Adlai Stevenson, and begged him, do not let your brother go to Dallas. The animosity down there is terrible. They just spit at me down in Houston. And Bobby didn't go before, he wasn't there during, and he never went afterwards. Okay? And Jack Kennedy, which is another thing people don't really, was never publicized, would have never lived out his term. He was dying of 4 different diseases, one of them being Addison's disease, which is deterioration of your spinal cord. And they used to shoot him up every day.
Yeah.
Cortisone shots,
They shot him up. And he was, and I liked Jack. Jack was a great guy. I knew him in Boston when he was a senator. And he was a super guy. He was, and he was a great politician. But his father was the culprit. And his father would have rather seen him die the way he died than die of a disease that would put a mark on the family. And you could say, wow, man, that's kind of cold. But then you got to look at what he did to his daughter. He lobotomized his daughter.
Yeah.
And she sat in an institution for years looking out a window. And he did that because she suffered from ADD, and nobody had any insight on ADD at the time. And he was afraid she was going to jump up on a table at some function and start dancing and stuff. But she was acting out a lot of different things. And Joe Kennedy just wouldn't tolerate anything that marred what he thought he was doing, this perfect world it is.
As you put it, the family legacy it's very important for the Kennedys as a family to not tarnish what they had built over years.
And you have to understand something. What was built on false legs.
Of course.
Because you have to go back to the beginning. You see Jackie Kennedy. Joe Kennedy was the orchestrator of the crash of 29. And it wasn't done specifically to create the crash. Joe Kennedy was a very, very smart banker, very bright guy. And his father-in-law was Honey Fitzgerald. Honey Fitzgerald was a gangster from Ireland who came into America and did very well. And he was a senator of Boston, Massachusetts. He owned the bank up there, and he made Joe Kennedy the youngest bank president in the history of the country. Because he was that sharp. And during Prohibition, Joe Kennedy and a guy from Newark, New Jersey, who owned Fleischmann's Liquor, had a warehouse up in Canada where they were bringing, and his father-in-law had access to all the booze from Scotland, all the liquor, and he brought it into America, and they took it up to Canada, and they were bootlegging down into America.
Which is very lucrative for them.
Booze that was coming down that was going to the Purple Gang, and Joe Kennedy hijacked it. And the Purple Gang said, you know, son, you're a dead man. If they told you were a dead man, Purple Gang was nobody to play with. And he ran home to his father-in-law, and he said, you know, what am I going to do about this? And he said, I can't help you. There's only one guy in the country that can help you, and he's in Chicago. And he went to Chicago and seen Joe Esposito, sat him down and said, you know what, kid? You're a real good earner. You go back to Boston. I'll take care of the Purple Gang, but you belong to us now.
Oh.
And he was under the thumb to Chicago, and he didn't like that a little bit. And the only money Joe Kennedy ever put into a building in America was the Mercantile Building downtown Chicago. They made him build that. And then they sent him out to California because they controlled the film industry through the Cinematographers Union. And they introduced him to Randolph Hearst, and they introduced him to RKO Studios, and Joe Kennedy put together the distribution deal for RKO Studios by putting all the Jewish theater owners together and created a distribution outlet for RKO. And he met all the stars, and he chased every broad in the world out there. In 1926, the Hamilton Club, which was like the Newark Athletic Club, was a political stronghold in Chicago, in Illinois, and they sat him down and they said, listen, we want you to do this for us. Try something. And they stole $5 million from Pathé Newsreel in broad daylight with a short sell.
No.
And nobody saw it. And they said, well, that's very good, son. Now what we really want you to do? Because after World War I, America became a war-bearing country. We started manufacturing war goods, and we were taking jobs away from Europe. And Europe, which is another thing that people don't realize, Europe were the ones who underwrote the country of America. They financed the country. When the first Bank of America that was put in place, there was only $1 million came from America, and $10 million came from Europe.
Yep, from France and Spain.
They said they weren't getting a better return on their money, and they were losing all these jobs because of war bearing. So the boys at the Hamilton Club told Joe Kennedy, we want you to create a short sell against 26 permanent companies over in Europe. And one of them was a company that Blackjack Bouvier and his father and his uncle ran, and Blackjack Bouvier was Jackie Kennedy's father. And the company was a Rothschild company. They went bankrupt on the short sell thing. And so what happened was that they did the short sell. They made a lot of money. Kennedy got a lot of his land. They made a lot of money. And they took off for 2 days. They were coming back to finish it. And in the interim, the country panicked. And that's what caused the crash.
Yeah.
And when the crash was over, Roosevelt said, wow, boy, you did such a great job, kid. Now we want you to be the head of the SEC, because they knew Europe had to reinvest in the country. They wanted a new set of rules. So Joe Kennedy did that. He wrote out a whole different set of rules for reinvestment into the country. And 1935, when that was all done, they said he did a great job. And they said, now we're going to make you ambassador to London. And he went over and became ambassador to London. Before he went, Chicago grabbed him and said, listen, we have some people in Europe that we want to tie the strings together a little tighter. You're going to sit down with some people and do some business for us. Well, the first guy that he actually sat down with was the Shah of Iran, who was a gangster. They put a bank together. And with that bank, they lent money to Hitler. And he didn't think he was doing anything wrong because America wasn't in a war yet.
Yeah.
Then with the money that Hitler got, he came back to the same crew, and they added a guy called Khashoggi, and he was buying arms from them. That's when England got involved and said, whoa, you're the ambassador to England from America. You can't be you're aiding our enemy. And they threw him out of England. And nobody knew why he got thrown out of England, because when he came home, the Gore family owned the newspapers. They were in Indiana. They owned the newspapers on the East Coast, and the Hertz owned the ones on the West Coast. There was no television. Radio stations were owned by the Murchison family from Texas. So nobody ever said why Joe Kennedy was thrown out of the country. He just came home as Ambassador Joe Kennedy.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And then he said that, he told Chicago, I'm going to make my son Jack president of the United States.
Wow, talk about
the first guy.
That's like betting a number.
That's some brass balls, brother.
The first one that he wanted to make president was his son Joseph, who was the oldest son.
Yeah.
And he was a great pilot, and he was a great guy. He would have been a great politician. And he was 10 days away from coming out of the being mustered out of the service altogether. And they put together this plane over in Europe that they were going to, like a kamikaze thing, fly it into the munition factories in Germany to end the war. And they wanted someone to test pilot the plane, and they talked Joe Kennedy into doing it. And when Joe Kennedy took the plane up to test pilot, it blew up. He died. A week later, they scrapped the whole deal.
Wow.
So the people that were the angriest at the Kennedy family were the bankers at Geneva because of the crash. It cost them a fortune. And one of the people that were really angry were the Rothschilds, because that was their company, the Blackjack Bouvier, who was Jackie Kennedy's father, who drank himself to death after his company went belly up.
Yeah, he was going to lose millions.
Her mother married another guy on Wall Street just to keep up her heirs and everything, but she made a vow to get her money back from the Kennedys. And she groomed her daughter to marry Jack Kennedy. She groomed her to marry Jack Kennedy. And, I remember when they lived on State Street, right next to the political building in Boston, when he was a senator. I mean, and they both ran around. She ran, he ran. I mean, they were both like two ships in the night. And Joe Kennedy gave her $10 million to stay in the marriage, to make this Camelot thing that they put out. There was like a Camelot marriage and all that shit, you know?
Yeah, they tried to make it nice and pretty.
It was a joke because Jack Kennedy, you think Trump's bad or Clinton was bad. Jack Kennedy made them look like choir boys. He screwed everything that walked down the street. And because of Giancana being involved with his father, he put him up with a lot of showgirls. Angie Dickinson, Marilyn Monroe.
Yep.
He went through them all, so let me tell you. When it came time for him to, Joe Kennedy convinced Sam Giancana that he could have both his son's ears if he helped him with getting his son elected. And Meyer Lansky said, what do we need Kennedy for? We already own Nixon. And Giancana convinced him, no, I got both his ears. We're going to have this will be good. And what happened was, when he came to California for the nomination, and Giancana was told by Joe Kennedy that they had all the electoral votes sewed up, no problem. They were out here for 2 days, and he called up Giancana and he said, we have a problem. We don't have the electoral votes we thought we had. So Illinois, for the very first time in the history of voting, went Democrat, and 2 other states around it went Democrat, but they still didn't have them. The third day, he called them back again. He said, we're still shy. There's only one state that has enough votes that can get us across the finish line, and that's the state of West Virginia, which for a little state had a lot of electoral votes because of the mining factory and the amount of money that the state made. Well, we owned a lot of casinos there, illegal casinos. And Sam Giancana called the Cellini family, and they excused some debt. And West Virginia raised their hand and said, boom, and Jack Kennedy was nominated President of the United States. And when he was nominated, H.L. Hunt went to California with a suitcase full of money and gave it to him to have Johnson run as his partner for vice president.
Which is a smart move. That was a really smart move.
Running for president, it was a nip and tuck. If you go back in history, it was a very close race. Mm-hmm. And some people from Illinois that were dead voted 20 times.
You know what? If the one thing the dead love to do is vote a lot.
Oh, yeah.
They're known for that.
They didn't even have to have disguises, but that all came out at the end of the day.
Yeah, it did.
And when he got elected president, then his father said, make your brother Bobby Attorney General. And then he told Bobby, he said, put all my good friends in jail, meaning Giancana and everybody in Chicago, so he could get out from under thumb, and a few other people. And,
that's just a bad move.
And the attacks, and then he went down, and the people in Texas, H.L. Hunt and all the oil guys down there, were making a fortune on a product called surplus oil. They paid no tax on it. And he whispered in Jack's ear, and he said, you got to levy a tax on those guys. They're getting away with murder. Ooh. Well, that tax cost them $200 to $300 million a year, so they weren't very happy people.
They're losing money. Losing money.
That made some people, and then the Bay of Pigs happened, and he told Jack, those soldiers don't need any bullets in their guns, because if one goes off by mistake, it's going to create a big conflict down there. So all those kids got killed in the water. They got massacred.
Wow.
And a lot of CIA guys were involved in that, and they weren't too happy about the Bay of Pigs, what happened down there. So then there was somebody supposed to put a hit on Cuba, and all the theories came out of as to who orchestrated the hit on Jack Kennedy. But the assassination of Jack Kennedy was orchestrated by the bankers of Geneva, because they were the angriest. And there was a guy by the name of Carlos Sanchez, who was the Jackal. And did you ever see the movie The Jackal? Well, this guy was the premier assassin of Europe. And he was the guy with the umbrella. He orchestrated Dealey Plaza.
He was one of the most known hitmen.
Oh, he was amazing.
Yeah.
I met him. I knew him pretty good. He was a pretty good guy. I liked him a lot, actually. And he lives in South America. His father's got a big ranch down there, farm. And the guy that's in jail in France, that people think he's in jail, the guy that's sitting in jail isn't him. He's being paid to be there.
Some people. It wouldn't be the first time it happens. Now you hear something like that. Some people always think that that's a little fake, but it would be
like the guy supposedly who shot Bobby Kennedy never pulled the trigger.
Correct.
He sat in jail because he got paid to go to jail.
Yeah.
That guy never shot Bobby. He wasn't the one that shot him. And so the Kennedys, all the Kennedys, they swore that another Kennedy would never walk the White House door again. Bobby got killed. Teddy was disgraced.
Yeah.
With the projecting thing, and so they, just a lot of conspiracy that people go around and this and that and that and this and. Lee Harvey Oswald was a total patsy. He wasn't even in the building.
Oh, yeah.
There was a jail right across from the Byrd Building. Now, the Byrd Building had people, windows open, people walking around inside the building with the president with an open car below them. Secret Service today, you think that an open car president would be driving down Broadway with buildings around him?
No way. No way.
So, and then there were 30 people in Dealey Plaza that day that could have killed Kennedy. And Woody Harrelson's father was one of the hobos that came over the bridge that Dealey Plaza went underneath. And these guys came off the train. They were walking across the bridge with the president right underneath them. And they all got locked up. Woody Harrelson's father was a hitman from New Orleans. You understand? So there were 13 shots fired. You had Zapruder, and Zapruder took his footage of the film. Zapruder and Demorchild were two white Russians that were in the garment district that came to America in New York. Meyer gave them $250,000, sent them down to Dallas. They opened up the garment district in Dallas. Demorchild is the one who took Lee Harvey Oswald and educated him in Russian, got him married to a KGB chick. They moved over to Russia. He thought he was going to be there used to be a series on television called I Led 3 Lives. about a spy, and Harvey Oswald thought he was going to be this big spy. But he shot his mouth off so much over there, they got rid of him. They threw him out of Russia, and he came home, he was a throwaway. They're talking about a guy taking a shot, the magic shot from the window, from a rifle. I don't know if you guys know anything about guns at all. But
I do, yeah. Well, bullets do. The magic bullet theory.
Is all bullshit.
Plausible, but not real.
Well, here's the deal. If you're a shooter, and you're going to take a shot of 1,000 feet, and you have a car that's moving on a decline, you have trees, you have wind derelish in Dealey Plaza that was so bad that the microphones on the police recorder couldn't even hear each other. The wind was that bad down there. And you have trees, a moving car, side. So it's going to take you a while to adjust to all the variables. Now, you've got a bolt-action gun, and when you're a shooter, you have to arrest your heart for 60 minutes just to get it down below 60, your pulse rate, because your finger, the pulse is in your finger. It's your trigger finger. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to tell me that a guy's going to take 3 shots with a bolt-action rifle in 28 seconds with any accuracy? That's bullshit. Never happened in life.
It was more
the very first shot that hit Kennedy hit him in the throat. Because you see him grab his throat. Mm-hmm. First guy that got shot was Conley. Conley fell off of his seat down on the floor, and Kennedy fell on top of him when he grabbed his throat, and he got shot in the lower back that they never talked about for 10 years.
Yep.
And then the driver of the car took the last shot, and you see him fly backwards, and the back of his head come out. Now, if you're shooting from that window from behind him, how are you going to blow his head out the back?
Good point.
That is a very good point.
So the whole thing, and the Zapruder footage, 8 seconds of the footage was taken away. Well, I've got the frames. It was taken out of the footage, and it shows the driver turn and take the last shot that blew his head to the back. And Greer even admitted that on his deathbed, the driver of the car. And the car slowed down 11 miles an hour, veered over to the left. And if you see this, if you watch the Zapruder footage, the Secret Service guys had to run back up to the car because they had peeled away from it because they knew shots were going to be fired.
Wow.
And they ran back up to the car again. And when Jackie was coming out the back, and they said she was trying to collect his brains, that's bullshit. She was trying to get out of the car because she thought they were going to kill her next.
Oh, yeah.
And when she got out, the Secret Service guy grabbed her and said, if you mention one word of what you just seen,
you're dead.
We'll kill your children.
Oh, yeah.
And she never said a word. And she wrote a book, though. And when she died, her son was going to take the book and come to Hollywood and make a movie. And he died at the airport.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you know that was never coming out.
How is it that if all of this was orchestrated in this fine manner and they knew everything that they were doing, why were so many pages left sort of dangling?
Because you had the Warren Commission was put in place right away. You understand? There were 4 conspiracy theories that the CIA was involved, the Mafia was involved, that the police, the department down in Dallas, Texas was involved, because here they lock up Lee Harvey Oswald, and he's supposed to kill the President of the United States, and every one of the interviews they have with him, there was no tape recordings, nor were there any notes taken. You understand that? Mm-hmm. There's nothing down in writing. And as he came out into the garage where Jack Ruby was with a weapon, which should have never happened, but as he came out and the policeman that had him he watched the guy step away from him as Ruby came out and shot him.
Yep, that was suspiciously convenient.
Yeah, I mean, it was very evident. So the whole thing, and Jack Ruby, when the Warren Commission went and grabbed Jack Ruby and they sat him down and he said, well, I guess you want me to tell you about Chicago, because that's where he was from. He was a big bookmaker from Chicago during the old days, and he had a club that somebody got in bad trouble with, and they sent him to Dallas, Texas, and he opened up a restaurant with his sister and a bar, and he was a runner to Cuba. He carried stuff back and forth from Cuba, Dallas, boom, boom, and he was a patsy as well. You know.
And that's where the Cuban theory actually came in.
You can't talk to me here in Dallas. You got to move me. We can't have a conversation here. And they said, yeah, that's bullshit, blah, 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 blah. And he got somebody walked in with a needle from Tulane University, shot in his arm with cancer, and he died 6 months later. Which has happened to several people in jail.
Yeah.
The cancer department at Tulane University, and they took needles out of there, and they shot guys up in jail that they wanted to get rid of. So,
wow.
Conspiracy's conspiracy, and you know there's so many. And if you higher level it is, the cover-ups are just phenomenal. But every 10 years, something comes out, and the pieces to the puzzle start to get put together. You understand?
Absolutely, yeah. The play-by-play makes 100% logical sense. That's why I don't understand when you say the word conspiracy, it clicks up in people's head that it's fake. But when you give a logical play-by-play, as you just did, explaining every nook and cranny on exactly how the clock works, so to speak, there's no arguing about it. I always appreciate a good story like that, my man.
Yeah, that was
when they took him
pretty
to the
awesome.
hospital, they did the autopsy. You know, and I knew the guy that took the first shot, which was taken from a cauldron on the right-hand side of the street. A kid named Johnny Roselli from Detroit, for Chicago. He was down in there was a cauldron that went from the river to the street, and it was big enough for me to walk down. That's how big it was. Understand? He shot with a rifle. That's what hit him in the throat. And that cauldron today has been cemented in. It's no longer there. They just cemented. They went down to do a documentary one time, and they went down there cementing it in, so the people couldn't talk about it. But that's the first shot that hit him in the throat, and you see him grab his neck like this, and then they turned when they did the autopsy. Said, "Oh no, we did a tracheometry, and it'll get all messed up, and we cut him the wrong way."
We cut him the wrong, of course.
He pulled his skin back up over his head.
What do we got here? The president. What do we got here? This is my first autopsy, guys. Are you sure you want me to do this? Yeah, come on down. Here's some scalpels. Flip around.
But the autopsy was done by all interns. There was no real doctor that did the one in Dallas.
But that
came out. That's been published already. Then they took him to Washington, and the real guys did the autopsy, and their thing came out later. And it's just one thing on top of the other. But you're talking about one of the most significant things in our history, and the cover-up of it was terrible. It was.
Well, there was story on top of story on top of story. And like you said, every 10 years there was a piece that always flittered out, and it was a small
kind of conspiracy.
Oh, of
Anything
course.
like that. It always comes to surface. It always comes out at the end of the day.
You know too much, Jack. You know too much.
I'm starting to think that the backdrop is witness protection.
So, Jack, you talk about your old days of course, with beautiful women. You were just got out of the boxing career and you went into movies. And this is gonna be our bread and butter.
They actually came to me in 1966 when I got in trouble in Philly. And they sent me up to Boston, 67. Sent me up to Boston I was fighting out of Boston, and Steve McQueen came in town to do the Thomas Crown affair. And we looked after him when he came in because he was a good kid. And he and I became good friends. And he said, "Man, you got to come down on the set." He said, "I'll get you in the movie. We'll go back to Hollywood. We'll have a ball, man. You'd be great out there." And I said, "I'm undefeated as a fighter." I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "No, man, I'm telling you, it'll work out really good." So I turned him down. And then
so you turned down Steve McQueen.
After I knocked out Manuel Ramos, they offered me the Great White Hope. And there was a deal put together that they flew me out to Hollywood, and a guy named Raymond Patriarca from Rhode Island had put the deal together with Eddie Foy at Fox to get me off the streets to send me to Spain for 6 months. And they offered me this great role to play Jess Willard in the Great White Hope, which was the biggest movie in Hollywood at the time with James Earl Jones.
Yep.
And when I went into the guy's office and he's telling me, "Well, you're going to go to Spain for 6 months," and then I said, "Wait a minute! I just knocked out the number 2 heavyweight in the world, and I'm looking to fight Ali, and You want me to go to Spain for 6 months? He said, well, we're going to pay you $1,500 a week. I said, give that away in tips. And the guy looked at me. He said, well, I thought you were just supposed to come in and sign the contract. Blah, 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 blah. And a couple other people were there. And they said, Jack, the deal's been made. You just got to do it. You're supposed to go. And I said, I don't think so. I said, I don't think this business is for me.
Jack, you're coming to take names and whip some ass.
And Eddie Foy said, oh, my God, you're going to get me killed, man. You're supposed to sign this deal. And I said, I'll talk to Raymond. Don't worry about it. And I left, and Steve McQueen called me at the hotel. He said, what is wrong with you, man? We want to get you to Hollywood. Bam, bam, bam. And I said, Steve, I'm not this, you know. So then when I retired from boxing, they called me up to do Farewell, My Lovely.
Yep.
With Robert Mitchum. And I looked around where I was at, and I said, maybe I'll give this a shot. And I went out to do a screen test in California, and Harry Dean Stanton was there, and some other people. And Robert saw the screen test, and he said, it's either him or I don't do the movie. So I blame it all on Robert Mitchum. Who was an incredible individual. God, what a great person.
Great person, great actor, right?
Oh, he's brilliant, man. Well, probably one of the most well-read men I ever met in my life.
Now, of course, you went in from Farewell, My Lovely to
King Kong.
That was King Kong. That's right. You were into King Kong, and then you went into Dragnet.
March or Die.
No. You were in Superman first, right? Superman.
No, it did March or Die.
March or Die. Okay.
And when I went down to do March or Die, they came to me. I was supposed to go down and do March or Die, and they came to me to do the Bond movie, and I said no. And the guy said, well, we really want you to do this character of Jaws. And I said, Dad, I didn't like the script. And in fact, when Cubby Broccoli and his son were at my agent's office, I was around the corner at a restaurant with Mitchum celebrating his birthday. So we were talking a few wines up, and Mitchum said, do you like the script? I said, hell no. He said, tell him to go to hell.
With your stature, you could have totally done the part of Jaws, no problem.
Oh, they begged me to do it. So I turned it down, and then I went down to Spain, and we did March or Die, and the same crew was the crew from England, and they flew Hackman and I up from Spain to meet Richard Donner for Superman.
Nice.
And Richard Donner and I had a conversation, and he said, we really would like you to do this role, but how do you feel about playing a deaf-mute guy? And I said, to tell you the truth, I embrace it. He said, what? I said, well, Jackie Gleason was a friend of mine, and he did a picture called Gigo and won an Oscar for playing a deaf-mute guy.
That's
yeah.
I said, if I ever get an opportunity to do that, I would embrace it. I said, this is a perfect opportunity because you have Terrence Stamp, who's a vicious general, and Sarah, who was a man-eater. Somebody had to relate to the kids in the audience. And here I was going to take this big, brutish guy and play him like a child.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that because he got lobotomized, Anon was a brilliant scientist that they lobotomized. And so he became this mutant. And so I said, I have to learn how to work my eyes and everything, and I'll play it like a kid, learning how to walk and talk.
That is,
and it turned out pretty well.
So that was all written in before. It wasn't a matter of, you have one guy who's American and two actors who are British, and they wanted to somehow mask the idea that they were British and you weren't, or it was already written in.
It had nothing to do with it. No, they just thought that Farewell, My Lovely, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a very good movie. And it vaulted me into the industry. And King Kong was, was like a bunch of people that were, we had a great script, a great story, a great cast, and a drunk director. So
you got to be drunk to direct. You got to be a little drunk to direct King Kong,
John Gillerman was a trip. Here's a good. You'll love this.
We got to hear this story. Let's do it.
We're working in Hawaii, yeah. So we're on location, number one, and it's a Sunday. So now you're on location and you're working on a Sunday, so you're like in quadruple time.
Oh yeah.
And John Gillerman is we're laying the fog that we came through to get to the island. You know, they wanted to lay the smoke down for the fog, and the people from the island kept telling Gilliman, "You'll never do it on this day because the winds and stuff. It's just never going to happen." And John's like Sailor Joe Dick puts his finger up. He says, "Oh no, I can get that shot. I can do it." So we worked 15 hours. We're working 15 hours on double overtime, and we had 7 straight meal penalties, and never turned the camera over.
Wow.
So you think that cost them some money that day?
That's a lot of cash.
You know, so and we wound up shooting that very shot at Zuma Beach in California.
So they had to reshoot it anyways in California? Or
we shot in California in Zuma Beach.
Okay.
We laid the fog up there, you know.
So it was a good vacation for a bit.
Landing on the island and everything. Did that in Hawaii. But coming through the fog, we had to shoot in Zuma Beach.
That's slightly intricate, but I like the brass on a director when he did, just throw the wind up there.
We can do this.
2 miles an hour, sir. Your finger is not. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
No, you do experience a crazy director. Some of the crazy ones are all right, but some of the crazy directors are just plain old crazy. You don't even know how the hell they got the job. It's almost like they got the job because no one else wanted it.
Yeah, but some of those crazy directors are brilliant, creatively guys.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
They're screwy, but they have people around them that do their jobs well, and the pictures turned out pretty good. You know, it's.
Now, Jack, what was the beef between you and Christopher Reeve?
People have blown this thing up so out of proportion. It's just so foolish because Christopher was a nice kid when he was a kid. This is the first big movie he ever did. Never did anything before Superman.
Oh, yeah.
When he came on the set, he weighed 178 pounds or something like that. And the guy that did Darth Vader is a bodybuilder, and they got him to
David Frost.
David's a super guy. And he was going to get Christopher. And I said to David, I said, listen, you don't want to bulk him up too much. You want to make him like Steve Reeves, Mr. America in America, who's defined, cut his body with definition. And so they put 20 pounds on him and gave him great definition because when he wore the costume, it looked natural. Didn't have to wear anything under it, make him look like a muscle guy or anything. It looked very natural, and it worked very well.
Just like Scotty right now.
So it worked well, and there will never be another Christopher Reeve.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
Nobody will ever. But that's Donner. You got to give that credit to Donner. Donner shot him down, and he got a performance from this young man that was magic.
Oh yeah. It was one of the most iconic movies of all time.
All of us worked together, and we worked a lot of hours together. You know, so Chris was a nice kid, but he was a kid, and there was some people, friends of mine, owned an Italian restaurant called the San Lorenzo on Beecham Place in London. They were the first Italians to really put a good Italian restaurant in. And I talked everybody into going in to eat because they were friends of mine, helped them with their business and stuff. And I used to live down the street at Beecham Place, and I'd walk up to eat dinner every night. Sit down with some friends of mine from London. I knew all the underworld people over there were good friends of mine. And all the crew, Hackman and everybody would come in and have dinner at the big table, Rally Perrine and everybody, because the food was superb. And Christopher's in there one night talking about me and my father in New York and a lot of things that he really had no business talking about. So the owner of the restaurant, who's a friend of mine, called me on the phone and said, Jack, how well do you know this Christopher Reeve kid? And I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, he's in here talking about a lot of things about your family and everything, and I don't think he should be doing that. So the next day I waited for him to come to work, and I took him in a room, and we had a very serious conversation. And I just said to him, how well do you know me, son? He said, well, I just hear stories about you and about this and this and all. I said, well, next time you're out in public and you mention my name, put Mr. in front of it. If you ever talk about my family again, I said, you and I are going to have, there's going to be a problem here. And you really don't want that problem, trust me. So
he'll be spitting teeth.
Now we're out in the hall with all these people there and everything. And all of a sudden he thinks he's Superman. He says, you can't talk to me that way. And I said, what? And I grabbed that and I put him up against the wall.
Jack. Christopher Reeves thinks he's Superman.
And I put him up against the wall, and I'm just ready to whack him. And Richard Donner got up in my ear and he said, "Not in the face, Jack. Not in the face."
You can't hit him in a moneymaker.
And that's what I did. I broke up laughing just like that, and I dropped him on the floor. And I said, "You know what, kid? You don't know how lucky you are." I just walked away. And I forgot about it, and it was done deal. I mean, when you're working with somebody for 3 years, as close as we worked, if you don't have some kind of an argument somewhere with somebody, something wrong.
Jack, you should have requested for them to give you somebody else to punch in the face.
Yeah, we need a stand-in.
At least a dummy or something. Yeah, but his stand-in ran away and hid. We didn't become the greatest friends in the world, but we were civil to each other after that. So everybody blows this thing way out of proportion. Oh my God, you're Christopher Reeve, you got into a fist fight. Believe me, there would not have been much of a fight.
Oh yeah. You would have smacked him around.
They're acting like that you gifted him the horse that he got knocked off of. Haha, there you go.
And that's another thing, his ego. That's he wasn't wearing the proper equipment. He should have had a helmet. He was overhorsed. Wasn't that great a horseman? And, he just wasn't prepared for what happened. And it's very sad that he got, I'll tell you a funny thing is that when he got hurt, he became a nicer person.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it.
Prior to that, he used to leave kids waiting around for autographs and stuff. He was supposed to show up at places, and he never did. But, but I never had a problem with Christopher after we had that little thing. And, and I felt bad when he got hurt. And I knew that he was overhorsed, and I knew, because I know a bit about jumping and stuff, and it was his own ego for not wearing the proper equipment. And if he had the proper equipment on, it probably wouldn't have happened. But like I said, he became a nicer person, and his wife was a super lady. God, what a nice chick she was. Wow.
Well, I know she ran the foundation for him once he got hurt, right?
Yeah, but she never left his side, man. She was there when they raised her kids and all that stuff, and just a really. And then she died 6 months after him.
Yeah.
She died right after he died.
That's sad, man. Really, that's sad.
But he did a lot for people while he was ill like that. He put they did a lot for his surgery, for neck surgeries and stuff like that. He helped a lot with that. He really did.
Wow. Now I know you talk about the Donner cut a lot. What was so prolific about the Donner cut that was missing out of the original?
There's not as much comedy in it.
Okay.
And Brando's in it.
Well, Brando is
Brando's in the whole thing. Here's the other thing. How do you cut Marlon Brando out of a picture?
You don't.
He's not in the laughter clip.
You don't.
They cut him out because they didn't want to pay him the points. You understand?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, you would want 50 grand just to read his script.
That's why they cut him out. And when they did the Donner cut, I remember when Lester came on the set, and I said, who the hell is this guy? Because he was walking around, you could tell by, and they said, that's Richard Lester. They're going to hire him. I said, hire him for what? To finish Superman 2, because they had to stop filming, because we were shooting both movies together. And we got hung up doing 2 because it was so good. And they had to stop. They had to deliver 1. So we had 85% of the film was shot. But when you bring another director on, if he doesn't have 50% under his tutelage, he can't put his name up on the screen. So he had to go back and reshoot a lot of stuff. You understand?
Oh yeah.
The credits are
put his credit on there, but. So the footage was always there, and it's just sad that he didn't have a chance to finish what he was doing, because there's scenes in there where when that magic thing that was thrown out, we we lost our powers when Christopher supposedly was supposed to lose his powers in that little cylinder, but he didn't, but we did, and he crushed Terrence's hand, and we all fell into the abyss. Well, we shot scenes of taking us out of this abyss and putting us in police cars and carting us away to jail.
Huh.
We actually shot footage like that. You understand? So it's just sad that if Donner would have finished 2, he would have done 3, 4, and 5. It would have been a different franchise altogether.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And Superman 3 was a joke. 4 was forget about it. And 4 wasn't done by Warner Brothers. It was done by Cannon.
Yep.
Cannon got a license off of the Salkind. He sold them a license to do the picture. They had made a lot of money from 1 and 2, and they made some money from 3. Not as much as they did in 1 and 2, but 3 was not that great a movie.
No, it was.
Like I said, 4 was just bizarre. And
Tony's got his beef with DC for a long time.
Well, I'll tell you, we've tried, and we're trying still. I've got a whole other storyline to create another character like Superman and just do it.
Well, according to myself, according to Tony, and I'm sure that Scott and Sparky agree, DC needs a storyline. They need it so bad.
Big time. No, they let Marvel Comics run out and do, they need it big time. But the storyline that we have would be a mind blower. I mean, it's a great storyline.
See, Jack, especially being a writer as you are, and even writing the book, you know the process that goes into it. You should just pitch something to Warner Brothers.
We've already done that. We're in the process of doing it for the last several months.
Ah, jeez, that'd be awesome, dude.
Get something.
I had a couple of questions from some of the staff at the Superman homepage. I was just looking at things.
Ask away.
Someone had mentioned Jeff East, and I always thought, as an actor myself, I always thought how disappointing it must have been when he filmed all of the scenes as young Clark Kent, and then, unbeknownst to him, they went and dubbed all his lines with Christopher Reeve's voice. And I wondered if that ever, if you had ever had any moments with Jeff East. You're not on camera with him, but if you knew anything about that.
We talk all the time. He's here in LA right now. We're getting ready to do a project together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're getting ready to make a mini-series out of my book, and I've got 3 more books that we're going to bring into it. And
Jack, plug it into Netflix, dude. They're buying everything.
I got a better way to go. That's another story. We'll talk about it. But there's Jeff's a great kid. He's got several projects that he's doing. He's a really good kid. I mean, he had a lot of fun doing what he did, in Superman. And any animosity towards them dubbing his voice, I don't think so.
Well, I know Tom East was.
I'll have to ask him. I never thought about that.
Tom East was in Huckleberry, Tom Sawyer. He did Pumpkinhead. He did a couple different things for horror movies too, didn't he?
Yeah, he's been around a while. Jeff, he lives in France now.
Okay.
So he's over here doing a couple things, and he's getting involved in our project. We're doing a couple things together. He's a really super young man. I like him. Hard worker.
I like how he still threw in super young man.
He is a young guy. Well, not a young guy, but he's he's in his 60s, right?
Oh yeah. No, he's not a young kid, but
that's still young today. Like back in the 90s, if you lived till 60, you were like 100 years old.
Oh,
it's like, oh my God,
right.
60.
No, you're right.
One of the questions that came in on the Facebook site was, out of all of the prolific boxers that you have faced in your career, which one hit the hardest?
Cleveland Williams.
He had some bricks for hands.
That guy was in shape. Let me tell you, he hit me in the 3rd round. I'll never forget it. I mean, he hit me a left hook, which was his punch, and my toes shook. And I fell back in the corner. He came charging at me, and I thumbed him, and I cuffed him, and I spun him around. I whispered in his ear, and I said, "Well, son," I said, "you're never going to touch me the rest of the night." And I just gave him a boxing lesson after that. But he could punch, and he caught. Thank God I was in shape. let me tell you.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the point for creepy whisper in the ear, man. Holy Lord.
So
with your ability to train and stay in shape, and you mentioned earlier how people were surprised when you arrived for a fight and what great shape you were in. I know David Prowse was the trainer for Christopher Reeve. Was there any input from you, or was there any idea that they might use your expertise?
No, I just had a conversation with David because I really liked him, and I said to him, because Dave was a bodybuilder, I said, you don't want to bulk this kid up. They were looking to pump him up. You understand?
Yeah.
I said, you don't want to do that, man. You want to keep him. You want to make him like Steve Reeves. I don't know if you remember Steve Reeves, who was Mr. Universe, Mr. America, and all. But he was like only 190 pounds, but he was
chiseled
perfectly.
Oh, chiseled.
Definition was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then they blew him up when he did Zeus, or he did a couple of those crazy movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger do Conan the Barbarian, and Reeves did
Conan. They came to me to do Conan the Barbarian, and I turned him down.
You turned him down. What? You didn't like the story? This is garbage.
Well, they wanted me to lift weights and blow myself up, you know. And I said, I'm not into that, man. I said I can define myself by isometrics and things that I do. The guy said, we wanted to beef you all up and get you. I said, I don't think so.
Because then you're stuck like that. You're stuck like this, or you're stuck bloated.
I said, I've got, and I remember, when I played football, I weighed like 280 pounds, but I ran on 4.640. But
you feel it making this kind of
when I went into boxing, I took all that weight off.
All that speed's gone.
Skipping rope and stuff, and I came down to like 226. I was shaking. I had to put weight back on again. So I used to box around 35, somewhere around 235. So, but I could move had a lot of good speed, footwork.
Scotty, what other questions you got from the website, brother?
Well, one maybe kind of a silly question, but it's more about the costuming. From my point of view, I don't know if I'm sure you noticed when you were wearing them, there's a red sash that sort of goes down the front and around the waist.
It's actually like burgundy. Yeah, it was a shiny material. Like,
and you can't even see it in the film. It just looks. I always thought they were dressed all in black. And
yeah, me too.
I only recently found out, and I don't know if it was the colorization process or if that was something that was talked about, or they didn't want that to be very.
Well, it was like a burgundy. It was like a deep burgundy, and you could certain scenes you could see it where they flapped a little bit, but and I'll tell you a scene where you saw that when we were on the back lot. When we stopped the police car, when I tore the thing off of the cop car, and where three of us are standing there, you could see it that day. It was like a maroonish.
Because of the brightness of the day, I guess.
The sun was out, yeah.
And how did they feel, those costumes? Were they tough to get into? Were they?
It was comfortable. Shit.
They seemed a lot more wide open than
it was great seeing Sarah like that. Sarah was gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I heard at one point, someone told me there were so many versions that were on television where they had the extended scene. You talk about being taken away in the police snow caterpillars at the end of the movie. And they had that on television on some of the ABC runs where they would put the extended edition on. I saw him cook a cake once in the Fortress of Solitude, which isn't in most of the cuts. Someone had told me, and I never saw this myself, so I always doubted it, that when you took the globe off the top of the police car, that the kid who rode away from the town, you threw it.
Never did that.
And there was a puff of smoke indicating that the child on the horse was killed.
I threw it, but it wasn't at the kid. It was at a Jeep. That it made me very angry when they put that out. That that I killed a kid,
Okay.
And it was because it really wasn't. We never shot that scene like that. When I took it, I threw it. We were throwing it at because the Jeeps were coming at us,
Right.
So I threw it at a Jeep, and the Jeep blew up.
Are there
I was working my eyes, and I zapped the Jeep with my eyes. It was when my eyes first started working and stuff. I was all jumping up and down in jubilation. Oh man, look at this! Look what I just did! A little kid.
You're bending the pipes, and you're doing the. I know you're.
It worked out really well, man. I did. I have so many. I tell you, so many. When I first did a Comic-Con, and people came up to me who were kids when they saw the movie, and they come up to me and they said, first of all, they said to me, "Oh my God, you can actually talk."
No, it's all a figment of your imagination.
Yeah, you can actually talk. And I said, well, I have done a few other movies, So but they said to me, your character scared me so much, but I loved your character, man. And it means I felt good about it because I accomplished what I wanted, kids to relate to somebody,
Oh yeah. I find it funny because a lot of the nerd community, like they're really, really into their movies, and they see it like a bad character, and they're like, "Oh my God, I hate that guy so much." That just means you're doing your job correctly.
Mm-hmm. Jack, at least you have a nice voice about yourself. I mean, if you came out with a Mike Tyson voice, they might be shocked. Oh my God, you talk like that?
Poor Michael.
That's blessed with power behind that punch, but when you sit down one-on-one with them, it's just like, oh God, what the hell?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing?
I feel so bad for Mike. He was a victim of a lot of men.
It's amazing the way that you were boxing, acting, and you still got it upstairs after all those knocks on the head, man. Some of these boxers you see, they get a little older and they're starting to skip here.
How many people have said that to me? You say, "Wow, man, you're not punchy or anything?" I said, "Well, I never got really hit that much, I kind of could fight a bit when I was fighting."
I knocked down anybody that tried to punch me. That's great.
Well, you got to feel pretty blessed, Jack. I mean, especially having such a prolific career in boxing and not having like what do they call it? The scrambled eggs, mentality where you're just.
Oh, listen. I think I was only cut one time, and I beat Carl Gizzi, who was the champ of Wales in London, and he was a hell of a boxer. He cut the flesh part of my left eye, and I kicked the shit out of him for it. But he's a good guy.
I love the stories about your boxing career. Like I love like. You went to South Africa, or you went to to England, or you went to wherever. No matter where you were, like someone hit you, you got so pissed, you're like, I'm just gonna f you up.
At least you take care of it in the ring, man. At least you take care of it in the ring, and you're not like, he cut me, and then I went to his house and shot his dog in the face. Like, whoa! You take care of it in the ring. That's always cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I fought Bugner in Albert Hall. Joe Bugner and I, and it was supposed to be a 10-round fight. At the end of the 7th round, he could hardly stand up. He came out in the 8th round, and I whacked him around a couple times, and they rang the bell for the 8th round, and they cut the round short, and then they said that's the end of the fight. Mickey Duff. So they gave him a quarter of a point decision. No one in the history of boxing in England ever heard of someone winning a quarter of a point.
What?
Decision. They can make fresh the next day. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Jack, they can make the fix look a little bit less obvious than that, okay?
Well, I'll tell you something funny. The guy, Harry Gibbs, who reffed the fight, was a notorious referee over there. And the referee calls the fight. They call the judge. So he reffed my fight with Carl Gizzi. And I beat Carl Gizzi 10 out of 10. And after the fight, he came up to me and he said, "You see, we don't take all the decisions, Jack."
Oh my God.
That's not even a Freudian slip. That's just saying something.
That's some great days, boxing.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh my God.
Of course.
If I would have bet on you and you lost by a quarter of a point, I don't know what I would have done with the judges. I'd be like, really, a quarter of a point? What's the spread on this?
There were some angry people in London, let me tell you. Terry Downs was in my corner that night. Terry Downs was the first real middleweight champion that England ever had. Terry was a good friend of mine. He beat Paul Pender for the title. Terry was a dear friend of mine. So he was working my corner that night with Johnny Dunn in Boston. And, he was livid. Oh, my God. Because they cut the fight from 10 to 8 rounds and didn't tell anybody. The fight's over. I said, what do you mean it's over?
Look at that.
Oh, no, it's only an 8-round fight. I said, what the hell? What are they doing here?
Yeah, that's like spinning the clock around a last call for the bar. You know, like, oh my God, it's 32 minutes.
There you are, halfway in the drink, and it's like, we're gonna pour it back in the bottle.
I'll tell you a funny story about Brando. I went down on the scene to watch him. Went down on the set to watch him work one day, and he's doing a shot, and the camera guy said, "Oh, we got a problem with the camera. We're gonna have to come back and do this again." Marlon said, "Like hell." He said, "I'm turning around, fix the camera, tell me when it's fixed, and I'll turn back into the shot and finish it." And that's what I never saw anybody ever do that before, get away with it. You know? So he did that, and he finished the shot. And he came down off the set, and he had cue cards everywhere. I mean, he had cue cards all around him. And I said to him, I guess some people would be a little bit nervous to ask you this question, but, I don't really give a shit, as you know. So what's with the cue cards? Are you that bored with the industry that you got to have cue cards all around you? He said, "No, Jack." He said, "No." He said, "I started that with Mutiny on the Bounty, and it's I didn't want the camera to make it look like I had been studying a script. I wanted to make like the words were coming out of the air." And I looked at him and I laughed. I said, "You're so shit." And he laughed at me. And he was a great Shakespearean actor. And he sat there and he ripped off a couple parables of Shakespeare. And he looked at me and he said, "That you must know word for word. This stuff, piece of cake."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was a brilliant actor. When he walked on it, he had such a presence. When he walked on the set, you could hear a pin drop. And he was very polite to people. He said hello to everybody and good night to everybody.
See, the press likes to say just the opposite, but it's you're one-on-one with them. You would know more than any reporter out there saying, "Oh, well, Brando's stuck up," or
Brando. He said hello to everybody and said good night to everybody. He may not have sat there and dialogued to death with you because people would they'd hold him up from working. But
yeah.
And Mitchum was the same way. And Mitchum, when you worked with Robert Mitchum, if Mitchum was eating steak for lunch, everybody ate steak. And we did Farewell My Lovely. I mean, Robert was another one. When he came on the set, you could hear a pin drop. It was just, he had that presence about him, you know what I mean?
How about Terrence Stamp?
Terrence a brilliant actor.
Oh yeah, he just got knighted, didn't he?
One of the finest English actors over there.
Yeah, he just got knighted by the Queen, didn't he?
What, just recently?
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was a while ago.
Oh, maybe it was a while. I just seen it on TV not too long ago.
He's suffering from dementia right now.
Oh no.
Which is really sad.
That guy's a brilliant actor. Brilliant.
The last show that was Comic-Con in London, it was about a year ago. And I couldn't go because it was actually more than a year ago. Because I had some heart surgery done, stents put in my heart. And I couldn't go. And Sarah, it was the first time the three of us would have been together at a Comic-Con. And Sarah was there with Terry, and she said it was sad because as the day wore on, his scribbling, his signature got scribbly. He was losing focus on dialogue.
Oh no!
And he's just one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. Terry. And he was, when he was younger, his brother managed the Who. The group, The Who.
Yeah.
And Terry was into sex, drug, and rock and roll, and he was one of the best-looking English actors that they had over there. Every woman in the world was chasing him. And then he went to India and he got wroth, and he got into this meditation and stuff. And that's right before we did Superman. He came back. It was the first picture he did, totally clean like that. He was just such a mellow guy, boy. He was just a really trippy guy. I liked Terry a lot.
Was there any talk of buffing either Sarah or Terry up for the roles in terms of, obviously they have powers from the Yellow Sun, so it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with musculature, but was there anything like that even talked about on Superman?
Terrence worked out on his own. He was very healthy. He was a health conscious guy. He ate healthy and all. No, we never did we get any special training for stuff? Only for the flying shots, which were very tedious.
Well, I know a lot of it's CGI now, but what did they do back in the
We
day?
didn't have CGI. See, we broke a lot of technical rules. We shot what they call today, and it's the new technology that they have coming out now. We shot VistaVision on VistaVision. It was a technology that these guys had just perfected. And what they had was a big 70-foot screen and 3 pole arms that came out of it. And at the end of the pole arms were body molds that we laid in, and they dressed us in the body mold. And we're 70 feet above the ground. And I'll never forget the first day we were there, and we're looking at concrete below us. And I said, this ain't too cool. What happens if one of these cast things break or something? Oh, no, those molds can't break, so I bang my leg like that and crack the mold. And the guys, oh, my God. And I said, so they put, poor Sarah was petrified. So they put big, pillow things underneath it in case somebody fell.
Oh, my God.
They shot us into the film. In other words, the film was on the screen behind, and we were shot. That's why the scenes of the fight scenes and flying under bridges and around buildings look so great because there's no wires or anything. We were on this whole thing.
Well, Jack, you're no small fry, dude. You're a what 6'6", 270 back then, right?
Yeah. Well, then it was about 250. Yeah.
Yeah. And there they are making like little. They're making little molds of your body, and you're like, oh, okay.
I'll tell you funny. See, we're doing it when we flew into the Daily Planet. We did that scene. Well, we did that on a set, and they had and we had harnesses with wires for that, and they're flying us, pulling us, and the guys, there was no machinery. They were doing it by hand. Guys pulling these ropes, and
oh God,
coordinated for us to fly into this building. Yeah, coming in the windows.
Yeah.
We flew into the Daily Planet, and they broke for lunch, and of course they had a few pints at lunch. When they came back, everything was a little bit awkward, and I said to the guy, "Are we having a lot of fun down here, guys?" "Oh yeah, we're fine, we're good." I said,
"Oh
if
no,
one of these wires breaks or something." "Oh no problem, that could never happen." So I started doing somersaults. I said, "What are you worried about?" I said, if this breaks and I fall, if I can get up, you better never be seen. So we had a lot of fun with that. But you had to make a lot of jokes because we worked long hours.
Oh, of course, of course.
The tedious shots that we got. We did the scene where we're walking through the Daily Planet. When I walked through the wall, crashed through all the walls and all that stuff, and they had the wall cut out. They had ram jacks that were supposed to blow it out, push it out.
Okay.
So we're doing the scene, and I just went right through the wall, and the wall broke, the wall apart, and then the thing went off and hit me in the arm.
Oh no!
And I never stopped. I just kept on going and finished the scene. And the guy, the stunt coordinator guy, all they could see was the back of his ass flying, running out of the building. He thought I was going to kill him because I got hit with this track. And I never even thought about it. The guy said, "Well, you okay?" I said, "Yeah, man." I said, He said, "Well, it went off later than it was supposed to go off. It was supposed to blow." He said, "But you pushed the thing through, so it looked like it blew off anyway." But you have little things like that.
The poor guy's running out. He's thinking you're going to kill him and his family because he said something off a little bit late. He's like, "No, don't hurt me, Jack."
You have no idea how funny that was. Everybody on the set was, their mouths dropped open. Oh my God, what's he going to do to this guy?
Now, for Scotty, you got some good questions, brother. Go for it.
I think I'm
You're
questioned
good?
out. I was hoping there was some secret scenes we didn't see. Movie of my childhood. I was 3 years old when I saw the first film, and
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Scotty. There was a lot more that not necessarily coulda, shoulda, woulda been done. I thought it was much better than the original, of course.
Well, I liked the Donner cut better.
Oh yeah,
especially because Brando was in it. And we did some really great stuff. It was much more serious. It wasn't a comedy act. Lester put too much humor in it.
Yeah, Yeah. I kind of agree with that.
You don't want it to have that cartoony kind of feel. Everybody already knows that there's a fantasy. You're already talking about a guy that's flying with laser vision and all that nice stuff, right? So everybody already knows that this is a fantasy. But if you can make it as real and gritty as possible, man, then you're hitting something heavy as far as acting, and you would want people to buy into the idea.
Well, I'll give you an example. You remember when we were at the Eiffel Tower?
Yes. Yep.
Here's where the cheapness of the Salkinds and Lester, because Lester did everything in the laboratory. He shot so much footage, then he would go in the lab and edit it the way he wanted it. Yeah. Well, the day they were shooting in Paris, they went to Paris as Annie Oakley gets her gun or some other production. They slide into Paris like sneaky, you know.
Yeah.
It was raining. And if you look at that scene, you'll see the windshield wipers on the cars going bam, 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 bam. And the cop that's questioning Margot, you see drops hit his shirt. They had to change his shirt like 6 times.
Oh my God! I gotta rewatch that now.
Yeah.
You'll see shots, and you look at the car behind them, and the windshield wipers are going like this. So I said, why would you shoot in the rain? Why would you just wait a day?
You waited.
He didn't.
Money.
It costs money, man. He didn't want to ruin. He didn't want to ruin or take extra days for shots.
Well, it costs money to do another day, to be in Paris. I said, wow, man.
That's awesome.
And Lester just fixed it when he went into the lab. He could eradicate it, make it look like it was a sunny day. You could do that when you're in the editing room. It made it look like it was sun shining out and stuff like that. But I mean, it just made me laugh like hell. Because you take a look at that footage again, you'll see the windshield with the car going.
I have to check it. Jack, would you count this right now as the pinnacle of your career?
I'll tell you something. I have a script that I wrote when I was doing King Kong, and I don't know if do you remember a picture called The Informer?
Yeah,
yes.
Very vaguely, but
Victor
yes.
McLaughlin, John Ford picture, won 4 Oscars. Well, I wrote another script, and when I first got my agent, Meyer Mishkin, and I was sitting in his office, and he's saying to me, well, what kind of a path do you want to take in this business? And I said, think about doing stuff like Victor McLaughlin does, because I respect him as an actor. And he said, well, they don't do movies like that anymore. And I said, well, maybe I'll just redo The Informer. And he said, wait a minute, you're not an actor 6 months, and you're going to be a producer and a writer? I said, well, what's the big deal? So I sat down with Robert Mitchum, who he and I became very close. He was like a father. And I said, I got this idea. He said, great idea. Go to London, and you meet the writer that wrote the book, and sit down and Liam Flaherty, and sit down with him and find out where he got his characters from and put it in your head. Go to a library and read a dozen scripts that were Oscar-winning scripts and look at the format, how they were put together. And so I did that. I wrote a great script. And one day, so I'm just about getting ready to go to Ireland to do it. And it's my Oscar. I'm going to do Victor McLaughlin. It's a great, great script. And we did it in Ireland, where they did the Informer. They did it in America. It was all very dark. It was done in one night. And we show the Irish hills of Ireland, which is greener than green, Wicklow Mountains and stuff. And it's going to be cool. It's going to be good, actually. Looking forward to it.
That sounds
After 40
awesome.
years, I'm finally going to do it.
Oh my gosh.
I was up to bat a couple times. I didn't like the deal, so I kept turning it down. Now I've got it to where I want it. We've got the money to do it, so we're going to have a lot of fun.
I love the fact that you pick and choose, and not to say that you've reached the epitome of your career, but you were like, nah, I'm not going to do it, and just not do it at all. You weren't crazy about getting that type of fame when you've already had, your prolific sports career. You had, things going on in your life that were already big for you.
So Mitchum told me, he said, if you don't like something, don't do it. It's just, Robert was, Mitchum was one of the most incredible actors that probably should have won a couple Oscars, but never, he just didn't care. He did what he wanted to do, and he had a brilliant career. He he was a unique individual. And I'll tell you a great story. He was very close to Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes loved him. Howard Hughes, when Robert got busted for marijuana in the 40s in Hollywood, he said it was a setup, Jack. He said, I walked into this party, I just put my hands out. He said, I knew it was a setup. They wanted him to tell who was smoking pot and stuff in Hollywood. And he wouldn't tell them. He did 6 months in jail, and because he wouldn't tell on anybody. So Howard Hughes got him out. Howard Hughes went down to see him when he was in jail, and Howard Hughes was a cleanly nut, right? All those germs, hated germs, all that stuff. So he's down there, he's looking at Mitchum behind the bars, and he said, Robert, you don't have to be in this disgustingly filthy place with all these filthy individuals. And Mitch looked around, he said, but Howard, I'm in this wonderful establishment with all these fine gentlemen here. And when he came out of jail, Hughes gave him a check for $250,000, and his career never did it. It just kept going on and on. So he and Hughes had RKO Studios. He wanted Robert to come down and run the studio for him. And Mitchum said, but Howard, I'd have to get up before the actors. He used to get down and sit with him at night, and they used to drink bourbon together. And Howard Hughes was like telepathic, man. He was a brilliant guy. And Robert's sitting there with him one night, and before the phone even rang, Howard Hughes was reaching for the phone, and he said to Robert, why this guy's calling me up? He said, Jesus, pain in the ass. And he knew who was on the phone. So Mitchum said, he's playing a game with me. He's playing, this is bullshit. So he gave a guy a couple nickels in the street, and he gave him a phone number, and he said, I want you to call me at this time tonight. The guy said, yeah, no problem. So he's sitting there talking to Hughes, and they're bullshitting back and forth. And Robert's looking at his watch, and Howard Hughes goes to reach for the phone, and before he even picked up, he looked at Mitchum and he said, Robert, why is this man calling you here tonight? How does he know you're here?
He knew.
And he knew that somebody from outside was calling.
Holy crap.
He picked the phone up.
A tracker on him. You never know.
Now, here's the best story. Here's the best one, though. Robert lived in Maryland, and he raised quarter horses. He was big. In fact, he won the Rio Dosa a couple times. But he had a big farm in Maryland before he moved up to Northern California. And he was like the resident star for the White House. So anytime they had a party, if he was home, they would ask him to come up, and he would be the resident star for the White House.
Makes sense.
He said, I just come back from doing a picture, and I get this call, would you please come to a dinner at the White House? He said, I didn't think anything of it, so he went. But he was the only non-military guy there. And he's saying, wow, this was kind of strange. So, and Robert was one of the most well-read men I ever knew. He knew, you try to bullshit him, he could bullshit you because he read so much.
He was so good on facts and figures.
He knew exactly, you know what I mean? If I mentioned a street in London, he'd say, well, they still have that bakery, and he never was on that street. He read it in the book, you know? So he's standing there after dinner.
So he was Google before Google. Yeah.
So he's standing there talking to all these guys after dinner, and one guy says to him, Robert, what do you know about Vietnam? And he said, I was just about ready to bullshit the guy. And I looked at him, I said, I don't know anything, actually. And one guy said, well, don't you think you should find out? So he said, I went home scratching my head, wondering what that was all about. Now, he was in the service, and he was one of those people that they asked to leave because he was always in the break for smoking pot and stuff. So he gets a letter from the government. You're now inducted back into the armed forces at the level of colonel. And they brought him back into the service, and he went on these helicopter trips because he had this unbelievable mind. When he saw stuff, he could draw maps and things of what he saw. He never forgot anything.
Huh.
And they had him flying around looking at all these different sites. And he said, I was over there for about 3 weeks, and one day we're up and we're flying over some area, and all of a sudden they're shooting at me. They're shooting at my helicopter. He said, and when we landed, I said, guys, this game's over. I'm
done. Peace out.
This is a little bit too serious. So he goes comes home, and he's still trying to figure out what this whole thing is about. And then he gets a phone call from Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes said to him, "Do you know about Vietnam now, Robert?"
Oh.
Oh, God.
He orchestrated the
Howard
whole thing.
Hughes. Howard freaking Hughes.
Are you kidding me? He said, "No, that bastard." He said, because I used to say to him, "Are you still talking to Hughes?" He said, "No." He said, "I calls me up once a month to make sure we're both alive."
That's a prank.
How would he not? How would he? He would already know.
Howard Hughes is bad at pranking.
He was when he was at the end of his days. He was, the FBI guy was Howard Hughes in Vegas. And he was the destruction. That was when Hughes went to Vegas. That destroyed Vegas. Brought the government in, and Vegas changed after that. Everybody sold their end of the casinos. It became a zoo over there.
Oh yeah. Total numbers game as far as money and old money, new money.
Vegas was built because it's in the middle of the desert. And the only thing you could do was gamble there.
Yep.
And they made a deal that they would never put a casino in California.
Yep.
And people would fly in from everywhere to go to this Mecca where they had great shows and stuff like that.
Well, weren't they originally supposed to pop up Reno like that, and then they said no?
Vegas was a better close to LA and better scenario. Reno, in fact, the owners of the casinos in Reno, the Cadero family, they just bought Caesar's Palace.
Okay.
But Vegas was the mob opened up. Vegas was a Mormon town, and in fact, when they first opened the casino there, all the workers. The Mormon church said, "Oh, you guys can't work in those casinos. You're not allowed to go in those places." And then one of the elders said, "But wait a minute. Look at all the money they're going to make, and they can make contributions to the church. Are you people crazy? Let them go to work." So they said, "Okay, you can go to work there, but as soon as your shift's over, you got to leave. You can't hang around. You gotta
go. My God."
So we try to tell a kid you can't eat candy in the candy store.
Yeah.
But it was the whole beginning of Vegas is kind of comical when you really get down to it.
Yeah, because it was done by a lot of Indian tribes, the Indian councils, and they got together with all their money, and
where's that at?
outside of Vegas, right?
Well, outside. You see, Vegas itself was totally controlled by the families.
Okay.
And it was a much better place that people used to dress up for shows.
Oh, of course. And
you wouldn't think of committing a crime in Vegas. And all the prostitutes nobody bothered them. It was all a straightforward business. It was, Vegas was a trippy place, boy.
And that's old Vegas, too. That's like Fremont Street and up.
Oh, yeah. The old, Vegas was kind of a neat place, boy, in the beginning. It was, I remember the old dunes, and it was, you could have a lot of fun in Vegas. Vegas is a good place.
All right, well, Jack, we need to wrap this up. But I want to thank you very much for sharing your stories and sharing your.
You a check for overtime.
I know we got caught up in boxing and movies and mobsters and.
It's been fun, guys. It really is.
Yeah, we really had a blast.
Questions answered, right, Scott?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My power went down over here, but
you gotta pay your electric bill once in a while.
Get Michelle on top of that. Hey, thank you guys very much, Jack. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Look for his second novel of Family Legacy. 30 days away. And very much thank Scott Vinicombe for coming on. Scott, couldn't do it without you, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As always, I am Tony Kaz, followed by
Kevin Neary
and
Marky.
Too bad we couldn't get the Picasso today. I'm sorry. Maybe we'll do it on a different video. But thank you guys for watching. We are the Podguyz Podcast. You guys have a great night.
Take care.